A wet fall has left several Michigan growers with tillage work ahead for spring 2020. Missy Bauer of B&M Crop Consulting gives her recommendations on spring tillage.
It's kind of a two-part. One part of it was don't forget about what we did last year to our soils. It wasn't a friendly spring, it wasn't a friendly fall, so we can't forget about 2019 even though we really want to. We got to remember we got fields that got problems, whether it's cleanup compaction issues, where we ran tillage tools wet last year, and density issues, but we have to keep that in mind. We got to start fixing some of those problems whenever we get the opportunities to be in the fields under the right conditions to fix some of those problems. And the second part was really looking at, how do I go maybe from my current tillage system and transition into over what we'd call more of a vertical tillage system. So today a lot of guys are running what we call horizontal tillage tools, either discs or field cultivators that can move the soil sideways but really can restrict root growth potentially. Depends on your soils and your conditions and stuff like that. But if you dig up your corn plant and you see that your roots are growing down and then they start moving and going out sideways, that tells you they're being restricted by a soil density layer. So as we look at tillage options, horizontal tillage can cause that. So if we move to more of a vertical tillage format, we can alleviate that type of issue. For in a no-till environment, there's some fields that you may have that are doing really great. You know which ones are yielding better. You go out there, you look at your root system, it's going down like it should be, 35, 40 degree angle. Those fields you're probably struggling with a little more, staying wetter too long in the spring, just can't get on them when you want to. Go out there and do some digging. You might find that you are no-tilling on an old density layer. So even though maybe you've no-tilled for 10 or 15 years, if the last pass in that field was with a disc or a field cultivator, you might have an old layer in there still restricting root growth because these layers really don't go away on their own. I think that's a concern for going into spring. Now some soils, if they got, aren't as heavy a clay, you might be able to get in and do some, pretty aggressive tillage yet this spring. Down like where I'm at in the sandier soils, that's pretty common. We can run spring tillage, primary tillage all the time. Our soils are just light enough that allows us to do that. But when your soils get really heavy, a lot of clay content to them, you may not be able to do that. So for some growers, unfortunately, it might be that we're in another situation of just dealing with the soil issues maybe that we have for another year, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But in any soils, if you think you can naturally do, spring primary tillage, that your soils dry out enough to allow you to do that, that you don't have too much clay content to prevent that, I wouldn't be afraid of all of getting in there and doing some of this tillage still for sure.